It has been fun for me. It's been fun for me too. I enjoyed being with you, and I hope that I might have said something that might have encouraged you a little bit, give you a little better insight. I do want to say one more thing, because this is interesting. You know, the percentage of black people in South Carolina is pretty high. And in the black belt, the percentage of black people was sometimes greater than the percentage of white people. Okay? So you wonder why it took so long for black people to get elected to anything in this state. It wasn't because black people didn't register to vote. Back in the day, South Carolina has something they call, you may not even know that, it was called a full slate law. Have you ever heard of full slate law? All right, this is, every southern state developed a mechanism to reduce the impact of the black vote. And what South Carolina did, they did a different thing in Georgia, but what South Carolina did was to develop the full slate law. And what it meant was that you had to vote a full slate in order for your vote to count. Now, I ran for the House of Representatives back in the 60s. I think it may have been 1966 or something like that. And Ernest Fenton, you may know, who later became Chief Justice, the first and only black Chief Justice. Ernest and I taught at the same college. Ernest ran for county council on that same ticket, and I got into the runoff. Now what people had to do, this is the way we did it. We got us a ticket of 4 candidates because there were 4 House seats in Sumter. Now, and we went to all the black precincts, and we had them vote for us only. And some of the white people put me on that ticket because my last name was Solomon. Solomon's a good Jewish name. I didn't put no picture in the paper. So some people thought that I was a good Jew, so they voted for me. So I got in the runoff. And actually, the guy that beat me was named Raymond Swartz. And Raymond went on to become the Speaker of the House. He's a good Jew too. Yeah, Jewish too. But I want to tell you about the full slate law because in every cycle, some people who are very bright concoct things to deprive other people of their full citizenship. First it was slavery, then it was Jim Crow. Now I think it's the judicial system. Because once you put a person in jail for felony, you take away his right to vote and all that kind of stuff. So now I think it's the judicial system. And when people get wise to that and fix the judicial system, there'll be something else. But part of what South Carolina did was to enact the full slate law. I thought that was pretty neat, so I would say it.
What were the requirements in the full slate law? Did it include a literacy test, a poll tax?
No, they registered to vote. By that time, there have been court orders which have knocked down most of the things that were used to keep black people from registering. So there was really no problem registering to vote. The problem was the way the vote was split. So, because you had to vote for 4 candidates. If I was black and I was running for the House and there are 4 seats and I'm the only one running, then in order to vote for me, people who wanted to vote for me had to vote for 3 other candidates, or their vote didn't count. Okay? And that's why we ran a ticket of 4 people. And one of those guys actually later on got elected to the House. His name was Ralph Taney. He became a member of the House and later retired from the House. And Finney got elected to the House a few years later as well. In '68, I ran for school board, got elected, and then the next, in 70 or something like that, or maybe 72, Finney got elected to the House, then he became a circuit judge, then he became a justice, then he became a chief justice. I mention that because as you mature, you gotta think about what's going on, because people will do things which on their face value might not seem to be very much, but sometimes they have ulterior motives, and sometimes they adversely affect a lot of people. And the full slate law was one of those. Now in Georgia, we'll talk a lot about Georgia, but in Georgia it was called the county unit system. You ever heard of the county unit system? There are little counties and big counties. You know, Fulton County, where Atlanta is a big county. Well, Fulton County had 4 county unit votes. See that arthritis in those fingers? When you get older, you're going to have arthritis. Fulton County had 4 unit votes. The smallest county in Georgia had 2 unit votes. So all you do get your 3 small counties, and you could outvote the larger counties. And so, and other states had something else, but I happen to know about Georgia and South Carolina because I grew up in Georgia and I lived in South Carolina. Okay?
I have a quick question. What was it like your first day in class that you walked into that college classroom and had to sit down? How did the people react? What did the professor say?
Well, there were 2, maybe 3 categories of professors in the graduate school at USC at the time. And remember, it was maybe 6 or 7 years later before a PhD was ever awarded in mathematics. The PhD program in math at USC had just gotten started. Most of the professors were new, and they were buying guys like this guy that lived off from Germany to beef up the department. And remember, there were only 9 of us. So, and we had gotten to know one another before that first day of class. So, class for me was not traumatic at all. The students were very helpful, the other students. I mean, another thing that happens to you when you're in a rigorous graduate program is everybody's catching, you can't say hell in this classroom, but everybody was catching it, okay? And so when you're catching it, it makes you kind of kindred. When everybody's catching the same kind of stuff, it makes you kind of kindred. So the students, I mean, we were great as a group. Now, I can't say the same for Andre Monteith or Robert Anderson, but for me, it was great as a group. My problem was when I encountered those professors who were silly enough to show their prejudices, and when I walked out on campus. Now, if you'd asked me, how did I feel, how was I treated the first time I walked out on campus, that's a different question. When you walk out on campus, people from behind windows, just far enough back that you cannot see, will call you bad names. And if you happen to go to the Russell House for lunch, don't wear any good clothes, because somebody's going to spill something on you, okay? And that's the way it was, probably for about the first year or so. But after a while, people get to know one another and things change. There's still a lot of prejudice in this world, still a lot of racism, and it's people like you that's going to have to change that.
Thank you.
Thank you.